Hare Krishna, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, 9th chapter, 35th shloka. Any volunteers who would like to recite the shloka?
Yeah.
Okay, Anand Keshwari will recite.
I can try. Sapadi sakhi vachonishimyavadye. Sapadi sakhi vachonishimyavadye. Nija parayor balayoratam niveshya.
निजा परेयोर्बलयोरथं निवेश्य
सीतावती परसैनिकायुरक्षणा.
स्थितावती परासेनकायुरक्षणा
ऋतावती पार्थसखेर्ममास्तु.
ऋतावती पार्थ सखेरतेर्ममस्तु
I can read the translation and purport. In obedience to the command of his friend, Lord Sri Krishna entered the arena of the battlefield of Kurukshetra between the soldiers of Arjuna and Duryodhan. And while there, he shortened the lifespans of the opposite party by his merciful glance. This was done simply by his looking at the enemy. Let my mind be fixed upon that Krishna. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita 1.21 to 25, Arjuna ordered the infallible Lord Sri Krishna to place his chariot between the phalanxes of the soldiers. He asked him to stay there until he had finished observing the enemies he had to face in the battle. When the Lord was so asked, he at once did so, just like an order carrier. And the Lord pointed out all the important men on the opposite side, saying, "Here is Bhishma, here is Drona," and so on. The Lord, being the supreme living being, is never the order supplier or order carrier of anyone, whoever he may be, but out of his causeless mercy and affection for his pure devotees, sometimes he carries out the order of the devotee like an awaiting servant. By executing the order of a devotee, the Lord becomes pleased, as a father is pleased to carry out the order of his small child. This is possible only out of pure transcendental love between the Lord and his devotees, and Bhishma Dev was quite aware of this fact. He therefore addressed the Lord as the friend of Arjuna. The Lord diminished the duration of life of the opposite party by his merciful glance. It is said that all the fighters who assembled on the battlefield of Kurukshetra attained salvation by personally seeing the Lord at the time of death. Therefore, his diminishing the duration of life of Arjuna's enemy does not mean that he was partial to the cause of Arjuna. Factually, he was merciful to the opposite party because they would not have attained salvation by dying at home in the ordinary course of life. Here was a chance to see the Lord at the time of death and thus attain salvation from material life. Therefore, the Lord is all good, and whatever he does is for everyone's good. Apparently, it was for the victory of Arjuna, his intimate friend, but factually, it was for the good of Arjuna's enemies. Such are the transcendental activities of the Lord, and whoever understands this also gets salvation after quitting this material body. The Lord does no wrong in any circumstance because he is absolute, all good at all times. Hare Krishna. Can you scroll up to the translation? So, in the first part of the translation and the first paragraph of the purport, Prabhupada is highlighting the Bhakta Vatsal feature of the Lord in obedience to the command of his friend. So actually, Krishna is never the order supplier. Many times, we go to Krishna, even after becoming devotees. Many times go to Krishna, requesting him peaceful life, requesting him so many things. But it's never a business ordeal. But actually, it is only out of pure devotional service, and out of if we can, buy him out of our love for him. That is the only time he's pleased with us, and he's happy to carry out the order of ours, just as he would of a small child, a father would of a small child. So that's the first part. The Bhaktavatsal feature of the Lord is being described. And in the second part of the purport and also of the translation, Bhishma Dev is glorifying how he shortened the lifespans of the opposite party by his merciful glance. And it was only Krishna's glance that was all that even the enemy party needed to become liberated or attain salvation from material life. Here in the second part of the purport, it says that apparently it was for the victory of Arjuna. So apparently, when we read the Bhagavad Gita, we feel like, the Lord was actually there because he was Arjuna's friend. And Arjuna was his devotee. And that's why he was, even the last shloka of the Bhagavad Gita, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, wherever there is Krishna and Arjuna, there is victory without doubt. So apparently it was for the victory of Arjuna, but factually, because it is a fact, as we have seen even in Krishna's many childhood pastimes, that even many of the demons got liberated. So similarly, many of Arjuna's enemies also got liberated just by witnessing Krishna's transcendental form before quitting their body. So, here Bhishma Dev is also remembering at the time of quitting his own body, let my mind also be fixed. So even the enemies of Arjuna were liberated, so let my mind also be fixed upon that Krishna, and similarly I shall also get that kind of liberation. That's my understanding. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for reading and sharing. Anybody would like to share anything from this? So Prabhupada mentions here in the purport, and if you hear Prabhupada's lecture also, he tells many times that God is absolute. So whether Krishna is being, approached in a friendly way like Arjuna, or in a way of a enemy, whether in a friendly way or in an enemy way, when Krishna responds with a friendly person, Krishna will be ye yathavam prapadyante, responding the same way in a friendly manner. If a devotee comes, Krishna accepts the love of the devotee and reciprocates with the love. And if another person comes who's inimical to the Lord, then Krishna responds in the same way, and they have to suffer the consequences by getting the pain, but ultimately they actually also get benefit of it. So any kind of interaction with the Lord is beneficial. So Prabhupada says that is God. Ordinarily, if somebody is killed by another person, he has to suffer. But when somebody is killed by God, even that killing also comes with some benediction with it. Okay. So we'll go to the next shloka. Anybody wants to add anything else? Okay, we'll go to the next. Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, 9th chapter, 36 shloka. Any volunteers who would like to recite? Okay, Anand Karishwari wants to read again. Go ahead.
Vyavahita pratanamukham nirikshya. Vyavahita
मुखं निरीक्ष्य
स्वजनवधाद् विमुखस्य दोषबुद्ध्या.
स्वजन विद्वधाद्विमुखस्य दोषबुद्धया
कुमतिं प्रहरात् आत्मविद्याया यश
कुमतिम् आहरादात्मविद्यया
चरणरति परमस्य तस्य मेस्तु.
चरणारति परमस्य तस्य मेस्तु
Hare Krishna. Anybody would like to recite, read the translation?
I can read
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Prabhupada Ki Jai. When Arjuna was seemingly polluted by ignorance upon observing the soldiers and commanders before him on the battlefield, the Lord eradicated his ignorance by delivering transcendental knowledge. May his lotus feet always remain the object of my attraction. Purport: the kings and the commanders were to stand in the front of the fighting soldiers. That was a system of actual fighting. The kings and commanders were not so-called presidents or ministers of defense as they are today. They would not stay home while the poor soldiers or mercenaries were fighting face to face. This may be the regulation of modern democracy. But when actual monarchy was prevailing, the monarchs were not cowards elected without consideration of qualification. As it was evident from the battlefield of Kurukshetra, all the executive heads of both parties, like Drona, Bhishma, Arjun, and Duryodhan, were not sleeping. All of them were actual participants in the fighting, which was selected to be executed at a place away from the civil residential quarters. This means that the innocent citizens were immune from all the effects of fighting between the rival royal parties. The citizens had no business in seeing what was going to happen during such fighting. They were to pay 1/4 of their income to the ruler, whether he be Arjuna or Duryodhan. All the commanders of the parties on the battlefield of Kurukshetra were standing face to face, and Arjuna saw them with great compassion and lamented that he was to kill his kinsmen on the battlefield for the sake of the empire. He was not at all afraid of the giant military phalanx presented by Duryodhan, but as a merciful devotee of the Lord, renunciation of worldly things was natural for him. And thus he decided not to fight for worldly possessions. But this was due to a poor fund of knowledge, and therefore it is said here that his intelligence became polluted. His intelligence could not be polluted at any time because he was a devotee and constant companion of the Lord, as is clear in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Apparently, Arjun's intelligence became polluted because otherwise there would not have been a chance to deliver the teachings of Bhagavad Gita for the good of all polluted conditioned souls engaged in material bondage by the conception of the false material body. The Bhagavad Gita was delivered to the conditioned souls of the world to deliver them from the wrong conception of identifying the body with the soul and to re-establish the soul's eternal relation with the Supreme Lord. Atma Vidya, or transcendental knowledge of himself, was primarily spoken by the Lord for the benefit of all concerned in all parts of the universe. Hare Krishna. So here, Bhishma Dev is praying. He's basically sharing various aspects of Krishna. And in this particular verse, he's saying that he's taking delight in this fact that Arjuna, who was polluted by seemingly polluted by ignorance, like it appeared that his intelligence has become polluted, has become clouded when he saw the soldiers and commanders before him on the battlefield. And that Lord that eradicated that ignorance that came upon Arjuna by giving him the transcendental knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, may that Lord's lotus feet always remain the object of my attraction. So he's taking delight in this aspect of the Lord that gave the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita to the Arjun who was clouded by ignorance. And Prabhupada is elaborating. In the beginning, he's saying how, so it's easy for politicians nowadays to just send their soldiers and their commanders to war and just sit comfortably at home. Because they're not fighting there in the battlefield, they're not getting hurt, they're not seeing people die in front of them. So so that's easy. Whereas the monarchs of that time, they had to go and fight, and it was great responsibility that you were seeing these soldiers and commanders fighting at your on your behest, and then they are all this bloodshed is going on in front of you. So so Prabhupada is explaining how in those days the citizens were not harmed, the civilians were not harmed. It's not like now when the wars happen, all the cities are bombed and all the civilians sitting in their homes are also dying. Whereas in those times, the citizens had no business. They were not participating in the war, or they were paying the taxes. They were giving 1/4 of their income to the ruler. And that money was being used for various purposes of the kingdom, whether it be warfare or anything else, but they were not part of the war. So, and king was directly there fighting, getting himself injured and everything. So if the person is there fighting and he sees that it's his own kinsman he's fighting against, anyways, it's hard to see all these people die in front of you. And then when you see that you have to kill your own kinsmen, your own teachers and family members and relatives and friends that you have grown up with, that you love, that's 100 times harder. So no wonder that it appeared that Arjun, any normal person would have been. Here Arjun is not posing, as a devotee. Here he is acting on the behalf of common man. That it looks like his intelligence has become clouded, and he wants to just give this up. Because anyways, he was not very interested in worldly possession. He was not there because he wanted to enjoy the kingdom for himself. He was, this was a dharma yudh. This was a fight for good against bad. So for the dharma to win, for the good to win, that was the main reason to fight. Because otherwise Pandavas were very, they were used to facing all kind of hardships. So for him, and as a devotee, it was not hard for him to renounce the worldly things. So Prabhupada is saying that as a devotee of the Lord, renunciation of worldly things was natural for him, because he was actually trained in all the spiritual knowledge. So he knew that he's not this body, he's the soul, he's part and parcel of Krishna. So nothing belongs to him really. So he was not fighting for sense gratification. It was okay for him to renounce. And so in that spirit, he was trying to renounce everything, give up and not fight. But that, then Prabhupada says, that was due to a poor fund of knowledge. So it looked like his intelligence had become polluted, but actually this is the arrangement of Krishna to deliver the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. like the beautiful analogy of Bhagavad Gita is given. It's compared with the, how those advertisements are shown on the TV where they'll put something on a shirt, on a white shirt, they'll put like ketchup or something, and then show how their detergent is better than the other detergent. So in the similar way, Krishna had in that moment clouded the judgment of Arjuna, so that he can deliver this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, and in the end, Arjun will, he says that my my illusion has been destroyed. Can't remember the shloka, Nashta Moha Smriti Labdha, something like that. That I have received this knowledge, I've received this intelligence, my intelligence has come back again, and my illusion has become destroyed by this knowledge. So Bhagavad Gita is like that detergent that will clean up the polluted intelligence of a jiva. Even in Gita Mahatmya, it is said that if you daily read Gita, it's like Ganga Jal, that purifies your consciousness. So anybody who daily drinks this, they will, cleanse their consciousness every day, and they will never have any conversation with Yamraj, Yamena Charcha. No, they'll not have any conversation with Yamraj if somebody is reading Bhagavad Gita every day a little bit. So in that spirit, Bhagavad Gita was delivered. It doesn't mean that Arjun was a contaminated, conditioned soul. It is more for us polluted, conditioned souls that are engaged in that are in this entanglement of karmas and in the material bondage, to liberate us from this false ego, from the conception of this false material body. So, Prabhuji, can you scroll down? Just want to see if there is anything else that. Atma Vidya. So Krishna is giving his knowledge, who he is. One of the 5 aspects of Bhagavad Gita is knowledge of God. So transcendental knowledge of God himself. Who is God? And very clearly it is given in Bhagavad Gita, who is God? What is our relationship with him? That's the knowledge Bhagavad Gita gives us. So that Bhagavad Gita that was spoken by Krishna to Arjun to deliver him from the ignorance, Bhishma Pitama is saying, I pay my obeisances to the lotus feet of that Lord. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Thank you. Very nice points, Mataji. Ketchup on the shirt. Wow. Amazing.
Very funny.
Very nice.
ऐसा दिखाते हैं ना एड्स में, ऐसा analogy देते हैं ना कि how they throw something on the shirt and then clean it.
I know. Very nice. Okay. So in the same paragraph, Prabhupada is mentioning what seems like apparently contradicting points also. Mataji explains so beautifully. So Prabhupada is saying that being a devotee, right? Being a devotee, let me see. As a merciful devotee of the Lord, the renunciation of worldly things was natural for him. Prabhupada is saying here. So he's appreciating, and thus he decided not to fight. And then he's saying to Arjun, but this was due to poor fund of knowledge. and therefore it is said that his intelligence had become polluted. And then he's explaining that how Krishna anyways had to give this knowledge. So this it could not be polluted at any time because the devotee and constant companion. And in the 4th chapter where Krishna says, right, I've given this knowledge to sun god, now I'm giving this knowledge to others. So anyway, to you because it has been lost. So anyways, this is Krishna's plan, like Mataji explained, Tasha Mataji. So therefore, this knowledge is being given now. Yes, thank you, Mataji. Anybody else would like to add any points to shloka for this particular shloka? Okay, next one. 1937. Any volunteers? Okay, I'll read. Swanigmam apahayamat pratignam. Swanigmam ratam adhikartum avalupto rathastha.
Tam adhikartum avapluto rathasta.
Dhritarata charano bhayat chaladgur.
Dhritratha charano abhyacha chalagur.
Hare rivahantumibham gatottariya.
Hare revahantum ibham gatotarya.
Okay. Any volunteers to read the translation? Okay, I'll read. Fulfilling my vow and sacrificing his own promise, he got down from the chariot, took up its wheel, and ran towards me hurriedly, just as a lion goes to kill an elephant. He even dropped his outer garment on the way. Purport: the battle of Kurukshetra was fought on military principles, but at the same time in a sporting spirit, like a friend's fight with another friend. So I'll read again. Battle of Kurukshetra was fought on military principles, but at the same time in a sporting spirit, like a friend's fight with another friend. Duryodhan criticized Bhishma Dev, alleging that he was reluctant to kill Arjun because of paternal affection. A Kshatriya cannot tolerate insults on the principle of fighting. Bhishma Dev therefore promised that the next day he would kill all 5 Pandavas with special weapons made for the purpose. Duryodhana was satisfied and he kept the arrows with him to be delivered the next day during the fight. By tricks, Arjun took the arrows from Duryodhana, and Bhishma Dev could understand that this was the trick of Lord Krishna. So he took a vow that next day Krishna would have to take up weapons himself. Otherwise, his friend Arjun would die. In the next day's fighting, Bhishma Dev fought so violently that both Arjun and Krishna were in trouble. Arjun was almost defeated. The situation was so tense that he was about to be killed by Bhishma Dev. The very next moment, at that time, Lord Krishna wanted to please his devotee, Bhishma, by keeping Bhishma's promise, which was more important than his own. Seemingly, he broke his own promise. He promised there before the beginning of the battle of Kurukshetra that he would remain without weapons and would not use his strength for either of the parties. But to protect Arjuna, he got down from the chariot, took up the wheel of the chariot, and hurriedly rushed at Bhishma Dev in an angry mood, as a lion goes to kill an elephant. He dropped his outer covering on the way, and out of great anger, he did not know that he had dropped it. Bhishma Dev at once gave up his weapons and stood to be killed by Krishna, his beloved Lord. The fighting of the day was thus ended at that very moment, and Arjuna was saved. Of course, there was no possibility of Arjuna's death because Lord himself was on the chariot. But because Bhishma Dev wanted to see Lord Krishna take up some weapon to save his friend, Lord created this situation, making Arjuna's death appear imminent. He stood before Bhishma Dev to show him that his promise was fulfilled and that he had taken up the wheel. Hare Krishna. So, very nice translation. Again, fulfilling my vow and sacrificing his own promise, he got down from the chariot, took up its wheel, and ran towards me hurriedly, just as lion goes to kill an elephant. He even dropped his outer garment on the way. So Bhishma Dev basically last few minutes of his life, he is remembering the pastimes of the Lord, and he's remembering what all Krishna did. He's remembering how Krishna actually fulfilled Bhishma's vow, even though he had to break his own vow. So that is Krishna. He never let the vow of the devotee get broken. In fact, after the gambling match, all the Pandavas, they were taking vows. So Bhima took a vow. What vow did Bhima took? Can anybody tell?
Drinking blood of Dushashan's, like tearing his chest apart.
And what else? Ansh is also telling. That should tell the next one.
And killing the Shasan and drinking his blood.
And what else?
And killing the Duryodhan by breaking his thigh.
Yes. And what if he couldn't do that?
He can do it.
He said, I'm going to break the chest of the Shasan and the thigh of Duryodhan, and I'm going to kill them. If I don't kill them, then I will not have a higher destination in future. Yes. So like that, they all took the vows. So what happened when these vows were taken? Then it was obvious that they had to fulfill these vows, right? Even Arjuna took a vow of killing Karna and then later killing Jayadratha. So all these vows were fulfilled only by
Because of Krishna.
Yes. So Krishna is the one who actually, and that's why Krishna sometimes plays tricks. Like Krishna actually covered the sun, and it appeared that, oh, now Arjuna is going to die because now it's already covered. But actually, what happens? Krishna was helping Arjuna. For some time, it appeared that, oh my God, now this is going to be the end. But actually, it wasn't like that. So that is the Bhakta Vatsal nature of Krishna. He's always protective towards his devotee and he protects the vows. So therefore, we have to be mindful when we take vows. The vows, devotee actually doesn't go on taking vows unnecessarily. He takes the vows on the order and the blessings and the guidance of senior devotees. And with their presence and with their instructions and their guidance, he takes vow. Otherwise, he's not very much into taking vows or anything. Doesn't want to give any inconvenience to Krishna. Like many of the devotees have shared this in the past also. Just want to reiterate how in our sampradaya, the mood is not to actually be great and take service from Krishna. In our sampradaya, the mood is to serve Krishna and not, prepare ourselves in such a way that we don't have to take any service from Krishna. We don't have to give any inconvenience to Krishna. Our mood is that we serve Krishna. We can get as much service. So the Goswamis, the Prayojan Acharya, Raghunath Das Goswami, he was born in a family of big zamindars who were practically the kings in those days. Lot of money. And what were their names? Hiranya Majumdar. And so one was Hiranya Majumdar and his brother was there, and both combined they had only one son. So this son left his home, went to Jagannath Puri doing tapasya austerity. Finally, he went to Vrindavan, where after Lord Chaitanya left. And then in Vrindavan, under the guidance of Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, he was performing his bhajan. And he was doing his bhajan in such a way that once he was doing intense chanting and a lion or a tiger came. He was drinking water. And near that, near Radha Kund and near Yamuna, they were doing their bhajan. So as Raghunath Das Goswami was doing his bhajan, this lion was coming, and to protect the lion, protect Raghunath Das Goswami from the lion, Krishna came in between the two. Since Sanatan Goswami saw this, so Sanatan Goswami told Raghunath Das Goswami, "Hare, what are you doing? For you, Krishna is coming and he has to do extra endeavor. So please construct a bhajan kutir for yourself, so that you are in the bhajan kutir, then the lions and others won't see you, they won't be disturbing you. You can nicely do your bhajan there." So Raghunath Das Goswami said, okay. But then, of course, Raghunath Das Goswami was so focused in his duties, he was not in a hurry to construct a bhajan. He was like, okay, we'll see. Right now I have to do my bhajan, my writing, my sadhana. So what happened? Next time when they were doing bhajan, actually Govardhan, Vrindavan, it's very hot place in the summers. Sometimes actually the recorded temperature was one of the highest temperature anywhere in Govardhan. Sometimes that also happens. So very, very powerful, strong sun, heat was there all over. And Raghunath Das Goswami was immersed, completely absorbed in chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And he was not having any thought anywhere else. And then this time what happened? It was noted by Sanatan Goswami that, oh, this time Srimati Radharani is coming and covering the head of Raghunath Das Goswami by her own sari. My God, now Sanatan Goswami, he is thinking, oh my God, Raghunath Das, he actually requested him to come to talk to him. Raghunath Das Goswami said, yes, Ji, Guru Maharaj. Guru in the sense that he was older, Sanatan Goswami was older. So Raghunath Das Goswami was very respectful. So he said, Sanatan Goswami, see, this is not our mood of our sampradaya. You are doing too much austerity. And this is causing inconvenience to Krishna and Srimati Radharani. They are coming to actually serve you. So then he understood that, yes, oh, he's telling because of our mood. So this is the standard of the Goswamis. Very, very advanced. And from their example, they have given us such nice literatures and such nice example, such nice goal to strive for. All right, so I will stop here. Anybody else would like to share anything from this shloka?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, ma'am.
So, Prabhuji, like you said, we shouldn't take any vows and unnecessarily. But sometimes I don't know if this is considered vows. Like people say, okay, I take a vow to, I don't know, donate certain amount of money for the temple, or sometimes we loosely say vow, right? That this kid has taken vow to memorize these verses from. Should we not say that like that?
So usually we make a resolve. Generally what we do is we make a resolution that these are my targets I have to meet and I have to be able to do this. And the vows which we make usually is, let's say, if devotees are guiding us or telling us or something, then with the blessings and mercy of devotees, we can do it. Let's say, for example, Mayapur Vrindavan, Mayapur temple was being constructed. So all the devotees all over the world were taking pledges for, donating this much amount. Somebody was donating 10,000, somebody 25,000, somebody 100,000. So like that, different devotees were taking pledges that they will complete. So like that we can take, but generally, vows are more like initiation vows or vows for doing thing. Generally what happens is people have uh, if they are not getting guidance and they're taking vows, they may get too much caught into fulfilling and doing their own things rather than actually doing what is necessary. So in premature stage we should be very mindful of that. But when Prabhupada is saying things in the Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam or writing, so those things we should make a resolution, like I must read this much every day or an average this much in a week. And similarly, so those things are needed, otherwise how will we go in our spiritual life? So definitely all those things are recommended to be done. Does it answer your question, Madhu?
Yes, Prabhuji.
So like for example, when Narottam Das Thakur approached Loknath Goswami or Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, he was Bimal Prasad, he approached his Guru Maharaj, Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj. Both of them had made a resolution that they will not initiate anyone. So it was their resolution. It wasn't like their vow. So because it was a resolution, they had to change it, because it was Krishna had a different plan for them. So like that, they had to initiate, Narottam Das Thakur and Bimal Prasad respectively. And because of which, we have such, exalted, exemplary personalities in our disciplic succession. So a devotee is taking vows only by the blessing and mercy of the Lord and the devotees, and he makes his targets, his resolutions, his plans for executing the orders of Guru Sadhu Shastra. So that is how one conducts himself. Does it make sense, Mataji?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you. So, Prabhuji, in Mahabharata, then why do we see so many devotees? Arjun makes vows multiple times, Bhishma Deva, Bhima. That sometimes is very bewildering.
Exactly. So this is basically for this day and age, and this is a lesson from Mahabharata, because they are doing things by Krishna's plans, Krishna's arrangements. In fact, Krishna in the Mahabharata also sometimes he kinds of indirectly hints towards this, that why you all have been taking so many vows, because once Arjuna took a vow, anybody tells me to give up my
I will kill him.
give up my Gandiva bow, I will kill him. And then what happened?
One time Yudhishthir told him to give up his bow, then he thought, what should I do now?
Yes, one time Yudhishthir told him, what is the use? You have not even killed Karna till now. Give up, you should give up this bow, Gandiva. Now Arjun was about to take out an arrow and kill Yudhishthir. And then Krishna said, oh my God, what are you doing? So then he said, I have taken a vow, what to do? So then Krishna told him, no, this is not how you execute this vow. Worse than killing for a Kshatriya is to kill by the words. Insult him so much that by your insult he's killed. You've heard that pastime, right, Madhavi?
Yes, Prabhuji, yes.
So like that.
So that's why I was saying. And another time also when Arjuna said that I would enter into fire, right? When
Correct.
the pastime where not only with Jayadratha, but when he had this argument with the monkey, that story where they were building a bridge.
Oh, okay. I know what you're. So when you were saying that, okay, I can build a bridge with an arrow or something like that.
Yes. Same thing, and that turned out to be Lord Hanuman.
Yes.
When the monkey stepped on the bridge, it all went underwater.
Yes.
The whole bridge.
Yes.
Yeah. Ansh knows all the pastime.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I was just talking about these vows that so many times, different situations.
So that's what Krishna is teaching us. Even the gambling, Yudhishthira Maharaj, being a Kshatriya, was challenged. He was, in a situation that he had to follow his elders. He was in vow. Bhishma had taken a vow. So all these vows, they were trapped to execute a certain plan of the Lord. So that is, kind of the instruction. So basically, a devotee is not rigid, he's not flexible, he's both. He uses whatever tool is needed at whatever time. So, as aspiring devotees, we have to learn to be rigid, not to accept sense gratification, and we should be flexible enough to be able to accommodate all the services within our daily routine. So that way we can serve the devotees and the Lord in the best possible way. For us, it is the other way around. We become very flexible when it comes to enjoying sense gratification. We think, oh, okay, this can accommodate, somehow or the other, even though we are busy, we can accommodate this sense gratification also, that sense gratification also. We're very flexible and inclusive of everything. Chalta hai, we are not fanatics. And then when it comes to cooperating with other people, or if other people are not following, or if some particular thing is not happening the way it should, then we become very rigid with others, very rigid with the acceptance of services in various ways. So that thing, one has to be very flexible, inclusive, be able to incorporate all those different services to serve the devotees and Krishna in a better way. Does it make sense, Mataji?
Yes, Prabhuji, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Like in one lecture, Amog Leela Prabhu was saying that sometimes, we are too much focused on my sadhana, my reading, my this thing, my that thing. And then if somebody devotee says some service, then we are always thinking, mera, meri sadhana, mera ye, mera wo. You remember that? I think it was one of the Mahabharata lecture or one of those lectures.
Yes, Prabhuji. And another point that is often mentioned, I think we have talked about this, is when it comes to others, we should apply scriptures and rules and regulations. We should be strict with ourselves, but to others, we shouldn't try to impose rules on others. For them, we should think that, okay, I've committed so many sins, and so I need to do extra, I need to do more. So if they are not doing something, we shouldn't judge them that, oh, he's so fallen, he's not doing this or that. Because we should not judge other people. We should be flexible if they are not doing something, but we should be more critical of ourselves and apply the rules and injunctions more on ourselves, not impose them on others. But we typically do the other way, right? We are free with ourselves, but to others we judge.
Exactly. They're strict with ourselves and flexible with others, and we do the other way around. We are strict with others and very flexible with ourselves. Very well said, Mataji. Anybody else would like to add anything? Okay, thank you all the devotees. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.